Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, my dear students of and respectful, how you folks are doing? Hope you people are doing well during this rainy days. And in our today's class, I will discuss a new course, that is Emily Dickinson, and she is included in your American poetry course. And you know she has 3 poems for you. Wild nights, I felt a funeral in my brain and I tasted liquor. That is, in our today's class we will know about Emily Dickinson, about her life and works, and in our next classes we will know about different aspects of her poetry and also read her wonderful poems. Wild nights. I felt a funeral in my brain, I tasted liquor. And my dear students, among American poets, Emily Dickinson occupies a fairly high position. In spite of the difficulty which most readers feel in understanding the meaning of many of her best poems, she is today widely read in the United States of America and in other countries, and is the subject of much critical writing. What makes her poetry somewhat obscure is partly the fact that she was a private poet. She was and partly her arbitrary use of capital letters and dashes and her violations of grammar. She is a private poet, and during her lifetime only a few of her poems were published, and most of her writings are published posthumously. Still, it is a pleasure to read her. The most interesting poems being those which deal with the theme of nature and the theme of death. And let us know about her life sketch. Emily Dickinson was born on 1830 in a small American town called Amherst, the population of which hardly numbered 3,000 people, situated in the center of a huge semicircle of hills. This town was considered a beauty spot in the Connecticut River Valley. Her father Edward Dickinson, was a lawyer, a congressman, and a trustee and treasurer of Amherst College. Throughout his life, Edward Dickinson was guided by a stern sense of duty, never allowing his emotions to interfere with his role as a responsible leader of the town. He ruled his house like an absolute monarch, rearing his children with a firm conviction that they would become Christian citizens. And now, my dear students, let us know about the early years of Emily Dickinson life. Emily was educated at home except for a year, that was 1847, at Mount Holyoke Female Seminary at South Hadley, 10 miles from Amherst. An active girl with a mischievous bent of humor, at Mount Holyoke she met Helen Fiske, who remained a friend and one of Miss Dickinson's few contemporaries to recognize the universal and lyrical power of her intense poetic genius. Emily probably had few male companions, although she enjoyed the company of Benjamin F. Newton, who worked in the father's law office and who tried to guide her in her poetry and her reading. His death in 1853 left her shaken, but probably more by the loss of a decent and sensitive friend than by that of a possible lover. A year later, while her father was in Congress, she traveled to Washington. During this trip, she visited Philadelphia, where she met and is believed to have fallen in love with a married clergyman by the name of Charles Woodsworth. As in the case of Benjamin Newton, it is not possible to be certain about her emotional attachment with this man. We only know that in her 23rd year she began to exchange letters with him. In 1860, he visited her, but the next year he accepted an assignment in San Francisco, to which he moved with his family. From that time onward, Miss Dickinson began to withdraw into her house. With this withdrawal into the warmth of her emotional innerness came to the beginning of her real poetic productivity. When her father died in 1874, and a year later her mother experienced paralysis, and consequently these incidents pushed her life more into seclusion. And she had an elder brother named Austin and younger sister Lavinia, and she had friendship with Ben Newton, L. J. G. Holland, and T.W. Higginson. And let us know about her possible love affairs. The theme of a large number of her poems, combined with the fact of her voluntary seclusion, which had led to much speculation that she must have had an intense but unsuccessful love affair. One revelation has been supported by evidence. A dozen letters written to Otis P. Lord between 1878 to 1883 indicate that she was very much in love with him, and that the affection was returned. He was a judge to the Supreme Court of Massachusetts at the time, a distinguished and unusually attractive man, but he was almost a generation her senior. And the attachment began late in her poetic career, and it never materialized, though it undoubtedly brought her great joy. The other person widely regarded as a man she was in love with was Charles Woodsworth, pastor of a Presbyterian church at Philadelphia throughout her maturity, except for the years 1862 to 1870 when he was in California. The facts about their relationship are all obscure, and the evidence indirect or speculative. But there seems to be good reason to believe that this was an attachment of great importance to her. He was much older than she, however, happily married and unaware of her adoration. On her side, it is difficult to say whether the image she cherished of him was that of a lover or a spiritual guide. Her own phrase was simply my closest earthly friend, but her devotion to him seems to have reached its crucial point at the very time she withdrew from the outer world and dedicated herself to poetry. It is unfortunate that a relationship of such significance should remain so dark. A third man was Samuel Bowles, who, on the basis of circumstantial evidence in the letters, could be regarded as the hopelessly beloved person in her life. He had the most attractive personality of all her friends, and a spirit most congenial to her own. He was too the nearest to her in age, and later she chose a life of seclusion, a life of seclusion in order to write poetry, and we see deep interest in living in her writing, and let us know about her temperament. What sort of a person was Emily Dickinson to produce so distinguished a body of semi-private poetry? Much has been made of Dickinson's withdrawal in her early 30s into the family grounds, the house and her own bedroom, almost like a nun. She talked to visitors through a half-closed door. She came to be regarded as eccentric, if not cracked, but the fact remains that she grew up normally enough with good schooling, much letter writing, boyfriends, gardening and household works. Her day-to-day life cannot be understood in such simple terms as a neurotic withdrawal. The house where she lived was filled with relatives and visitors throughout the year. She cooked and cleaned and gardened. She composed, drafting and revising letters to a wide circle of friends. And she was a private poet, and we find that she died in the year 1886. And my dear students, from our next class, we'll know about different aspects of Dickinson poetry, and later we will read the 3 poems. And up till then, wish you all the very best. Thank you very much.